2:49 p.m. Sunday, November 28th, 2021. Not sure how long it's been without checking since the last video was uploaded. I do know that I've recorded content in the meantime. I think Thursday I uploaded a cat video. So I tried having a whatever these are video Thursday as well as Friday, and by the end of them was just not satisfied with the quality of content, did not upload. Not sure why I bother myself concerning over things like that, because you guys, come on. I told you to stop. There's an in-joke that nobody gets with this channel, which is that it is intentionally low quality. Not that I'm factually inaccurate about anything or anything else, but low quality. So today, I've decided on a different tactic. Not that the quality will improve in the slightest, but that what I'm going to opine about will be different content. I'm apparently taking some sort of a cognitive break from the events of the day, as it were, the current event things. Not only is it Thanksgiving weekend, there is no news cycle per se. Not that there aren't things happening, but I don't know. It's just there's a lot of stuff that is just really only there. I mean, it's happening because events happen and things are occurring, and people are able to get coverage of it, and therefore there is a public dialogue or debate over it. But sometimes the debate becomes what seems to be the point, even though it's not. That's really what I come back to when why I got off social media. The gaslighting is part of it. The idiots that think that argumentation is the point, not that the argumentation you present is correct, is the point. So then it's like, well, I could argue too. No. That's not what it means. So I don't want to get into any of it. As with every single other instance of government and media working together, anything that they're saying is tainted, is probably wrong, is maybe intentionally wrong, could be intentionally wrong for a specific purpose of guiding people's thoughts and potentially actions eventually in given directions based on the reaction to this intentionally deceptive material. So instead, for part one, I'm going to talk about eternity. Now, something that is eternal could be said to be unchanging. An eternity can either refer to a single moment stretched to infinity, or a seemingly or actually infinite period of time in which very little, if nothing, changes. So, was watching a reaction channel, Alex Hefner, react to a brand new Tears for Fears song that I'd never heard either. It just came out, and it's decent. I enjoyed it. And before he started the reaction, he was like, I learned a new thing today. I didn't know that the moon has moonquakes. Did you know that the moon has moonquakes? And it's like, yeah, I did. And the moon has moonquakes because of tidal forces, not because of plate tectonics. The Earth has a molten core, and it has some kind of turbidity to it that keeps it flowing and moving and convecting. And as it does so, as the moon orbits the Earth, the gravitational pull of the moon against the Earth is what causes the tidal bulge. But as the water tidal bulge moves along with the moon, there is a tidal bulge that attempts to happen in the crust of the planet over top of this molten, otherwise liquid core and mantle that tries to follow that as well, but doesn't. And so there's like a slow moving pressure wave that then the moon catches up with. And it's, you know, the moon is slowly moving away from the Earth. A question in my mind, which I'm not sure if science, the research, seismologists, geologists, and planetologists, and whatever, have any idea or not. I've just not had a chance to get into, so I don't know the answer to it. But a question I would have is, if the moon corkscrews out as it does, I just heard a thing last night about how eventually in billions and billions of years, the moon Titan around Saturn will have gone out far enough from it that it will either wander the solar system or, go onto some kind of a super eccentric orbit that causes it to collide with Saturn. But regardless, its distance from Saturn will cause Saturn to start to do this until eventually it will just go like this and be like Uranus in some ways. So, and it's possible that Uranus's tilt was caused by a moon doing the same thing and then falling in. Although the object that they think hit Uranus is supposed to be quite larger. The Earth had a major collision with a Mars-sized object. Earth was smaller, Earth was a little bit smaller back then. Just a billion years after its formation, it had cooled just enough to begin the very first attempts at life forming, and then a Mars-sized planet, because the solar system was far from cleared out. Everything would have been, at this period of time, Venus would have been starting to get an atmosphere and water. I think it would not have. See, Venus rotates backwards as it orbits normally, and in doing this, it basically, one day on the planet, one rotation of the sun in the sky takes longer than an entire trip around the sun in a year on Venus. This all connects. I got a bit of time left on this video. Over time, Venus's rotation through tidal locking slowed. It is moving to a point where eventually it will have one side that will always face the sun. But in order for it to do that, Mercury and Earth's orbits have to shift and adjust a little bit too. And if they never do, then Venus's never will. We don't know for any certainty, for any length of time, how that will go. We can predict orbits, but there are many factors that we don't understand. We can't solve the 3-body problem, let alone the 100,000 or 100 million body problem of a solar system. Now, in the outer reaches of the solar system is the Kuiper Belt, which goes out beyond the orbit of Neptune. It's what they call TNOs, or trans-Neptunian objects, and that extends quite a ways out. And then after that kind of peters and tapers, then you've got what's called the Oort Cloud. The Oort Cloud is kind of the final resting place of anything that ever gets jetted out or pushed by the solar wind and makes its way out of the solar system, escapes the sun's gravity, but doesn't have enough trajectory to really go, or whatever, that there's this roughly spherical cloud with a disk-like component in the center, all the way into the solar system, where you have your asteroid belt, you have your Kuiper Belt that has kind of a donut shape, and then you've got the Oort Cloud, which is spherical but much more dense around the center of objects that are in just these distant orbits. But the thing is, some of the objects in the Oort Cloud are just in, or like, I guess the way you could look at it is like if you've got the sun, you've got the asteroid belt, you got the Kuiper belt, and then you got the Oort cloud. That all of the objects in these, some of the objects in these stay roughly within their areas, and some of them have these really eccentric orbits. And so, objects from the Oort cloud do make their way into the inner solar system and back. Objects, however, in the asteroid belt don't typically do that, although there are also asteroids that kind of graze where that belt is, or they orbit somewhere between, like, inside the orbit of Venus to outside the orbit of Earth, but not quite to Mars. Or, all of these objects and their motion and everything is somewhat predictable. However, everything is interacting with everything in real time in a way that no computer could ever simulate or calculate in enough time before the event itself would have transpired. Possibly because of entropy. And entropy basically being kind of a ratchet failsafe on the universe. I don't mean ratchet in a bad way. I mean ratcheting, like, once you click to a certain point, you're past it kind of thing. But it's not. It's an increase in a particular numerical value in physics equations that pertains to the organization of and distribution of matter and information in the universe, and that the more settled it becomes, the higher entropy is. And that entropy, as far as we can tell, cannot be reversed. There is no making that number decrease. It is simply a counter that always kind of, whatever the universe is doing, it goes up. We don't know if it increases at a steady rate forever, or if it seems to increase at a steady rate for, however long we're able to tell. We don't know. Or if they do know, it's not as easily available. But as far as I'm able to tell, the general consensus is that entropy just goes up, and it goes up at a fairly stable rate. But we don't know for sure if that could change, because there are places where you could look at the universe and think, well, if entropy was different, that might be why that happened. So out in the far reaches of the Oort cloud and beyond, well, probably somewhere within it, because the Oort cloud actually extends out over a light year from the sun. I think the current estimate is that the end of the Oort cloud might be 3 light years, and that Proxima Centauri actually might brush up against the sun's Oort cloud. Whether or not it has its own cloud that interacts with it in the meantime, who knows? We know that Proxima has a planet or two. We know that it is a flare-heavy star, and maybe it's actually within the Oort cloud and it's flaring because there's junk flying at it all the time. Who knows? Red dwarfs tend to flare a lot. So somewhere else out at the inner reaches of the Oort cloud, only 10,000 astronomical units away. Astronomical unit is, it was the 800 or 900 astronomical units. Sorry, 10,000 year orbit. May or may not be another planet that was somehow ejected from the solar system in order for the other planets to find the stability that they have. Not that it was decided thusly, but that as the whole thing wobbles and interacts with itself, like I said, in a real-time way that the no computer can simulate, what happens is if you have one piece of excess that can be flicked for the rest of the system to be stable, the system will go, and that thing will get flicked. There are wandering black holes that have escaped their home galaxies when their galaxy collided with another and combined, and a supermassive black hole and another supermassive black hole attempted to merge, and possibly one got flicked, or possibly a third body was in the equation that got flicked. So, the Earth has this molten core, a magnetic field that does some pretty wild stuff, and exists in just a perfect place at this current moment for what the sun is doing, which is not a forever thing. It's not eternal. That is habitable to life. And I wonder about, as the moon goes more distant, will the Earth wobble more? As the moon's influence on the Earth's rotation and its wobble lessens, will our planetary core begin to cool and solidify? Will our magnetic field vanish? Will it become inhospitable to our kind of life here? And in what kind of a time frame? So imagine eventually the Earth cools. Whatever the continents are doing at that time, in a billion years or whatever, which is a lot of time to change the face of the Earth, it loses its atmosphere, it loses its oceans. The volcanoes cease, the earthquakes basically stop, the plates seal up, and any atmosphere that is left begins to erode the land. And the Earth may or may not retain some carbon dioxide atmosphere. It may or may not become like Venus, but it's definitely not hot enough where we're at. And of course, eventually the sun it runs out of hydrogen, starts burning helium, swells into a red giant, eventually over time envelops the Earth as well. What's left is a Chthonian planet, an iron core, and some wispy carbon crust or whatever, and it's melted, condensed, and charred within the plasma of the inside of the sun, but a much less dense sun than what it is right now. And slow roasted for however long until the sun sloughs off all that crud and kind of becomes a white dwarf and eventually cools off in cinders in trillions and trillions of years. Meanwhile, Proxima Centauri would still be going strong the entire time, because red dwarfs are closer to eternal. They don't have enough mass for the large sustained fusion reaction to begin fusing heavier elements. There simply isn't enough gravity and mass to do that. So they just burn hydrogen slowly, economically, for the lifetime of the universe. Black holes will evaporate before red dwarfs burn out. White dwarfs will cool to literally dark cinders, not small, but an Earth-sized cinder with a mass of 2/3, 3/4 of the sun. But will have cooled off to nothing, and red dwarfs will still be going. The entire age of the universe from the Big Bang to present will have that's not the right word. Transpired, that's not. That amount of time will repeat 20, 30 times before red dwarfs really start to burn out. So this thing on Saturn was saying that eventually, when the sun becomes a white dwarf after the red giant, the outer planets will probably migrate farther out. They may actually escape the sun's gravity. They may get captured by passing stars. Eventually, the galaxy, the Milky Way and the Andromeda will collide. They're already interacting, and the distances are so huge that for our observations, what we can see versus what is currently occurring are two different things. We think of it as these two galaxies, and they have this much left. Well, what we can see from over here in however many millions of years here, but they're moving together, and they're actually really more like this right now. And what that means is that their outer stuff that started interacting here is really interacting here. Eventually, this interaction could cause changes in the central supermassive black holes of both galaxies because of any collisions of matter or changes in ripples in space-time caused by these two gigantic collections of gravity wells orbiting each other begin to interact. But imagine the periods of time, the literal eternities, on a planet like Venus where the surface basically doesn't change. The sun almost doesn't move. And I don't know, just contemplate eternity. It's healthy. It can be scary. It's much like the void, but eternity is not an inky black darkness. Eternity is, for some reason in my mind, lighter. So, contemplate eternity. What does eternity mean to you? Is it a perfect moment that never ends? Is it whatever moment that happens to be across an unchanging period of time. You could have geological time scales where a planet has lost its atmosphere, there is no particular wind, no impacts within, say, a human's visible range of where, a particular pebble sits, that this particular pebble could sit in its place without being disturbed for billions of years. And that even that is just a sliver of time in the lifetime of solar systems, where eventually the planets are either cindered or cast out like seeds into space. And as the dealie with, it was a Jean-Michel Gaultier thing about the apocalypse of Saturn, he was saying, what if Saturn, through getting tipped on its side, losing Titan, eventually its rings vanish, it would become more like Jupiter or Neptune or Uranus, with their ring systems being, apparently having already fallen into their worlds. That, Saturn loses its rings, loses its major moon, gets tipped on its side, changes chemically because of the changes in the sun, drifts farther out because of the death of the sun, gets captured by another world, another sun. And if that sun has, because at least one, maybe two planets in our solar system were captured from other stars. There are planets in our solar system that do not match. And there's a lot of evidence of stars having passed through our solar system in the past, like at some time frames that kind of seem to, within geological timescales, very nearly coincide. There are very short time frames apart from each other, with major extinction events and such, that it's possible that a large brown dwarf that was warm and magnetically active, or a red dwarf star at some point passed through the Oort Cloud, or even the middle solar system. But the planets have migrated. We've lost planets from our solar system, and I believe we gained planets from other stars over time. This is a thing that happens. So Saturn, having lost its rings, lost its major moon, chemically been changed, tipped on its side, flicked out of the solar system after the death of the sun, captured by another star, possibly in another galaxy, as they interact in whatever. And if at some point a star that captured that, and it was near the inside, and it became a red giant and roasted that planet, A, would that planet keep its atmosphere? B, would it become, Chthonian itself? What would a core of a planet like Saturn look like? Saturn's not very dense. It must not have a very large core. Well, what would happen is if a star captured something like that, and that star died, and if planets moved out again, and that this thing maybe got flicked or captured by another star as well, they think that Mercury is a Chthonian planet. It used to be a gas giant core, or at least a super Earth mini Neptune core that has been roasted to the point of losing anything except for basic silicates and iron. But that also, if this planet was just in a solar system that happened to have a Goldilocks zone with a planet that could handle life, that had intelligent life capable of examining its surroundings, could examine a planet like Saturn in its own solar system and say, well, we've looked at this planet, and this planet chemically doesn't match ours. It looks like it actually chemically matches these set of stars that way in the sky. Maybe it came from there. If they're scientifically advanced enough, they could figure this out. If they're not, maybe they'd burn somebody at the stake for suggesting such heresy. But the other thing would be, what if Mercury in our solar system is something like that? What if, Earth becomes that in another solar system eventually sometime? We don't know. The timescales on that are so long, they might as well be eternities. That eventually all the red dwarf stars that orbit through the galaxy pass by these other dead solar system graveyards and pick up spare planets and who knows what. By the end of it, could be a red dwarf mixer, just around the galaxy until they all fade out. So, that's a contemplation on eternity in lieu of describing any current events, because there is nothing of particular consequence that could be discussed that would affect any one of us at the moment that they're watching this video, unless somebody's kicking their door in with guns. So, hope nobody's kicking your door in with guns. Have a good Sunday.